people, but we are thrilled to have everybody here to learn about financial aid tonight. I hope, come on in, welcome. You literally just started, no worries. We're always excited to have Granite Advance come and share all their knowledge with us, and tonight we have Sean from Granite Advance. Sean is an expert in financial aid and is going to share information tonight about the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Last year, as you may remember, the FAFSA went through some changes and it didn't quite work out great. So we're hoping to hear another story this year. And so far, I think so good. So I will let Sean take it away. Thank you, everyone.
All right, can everybody in the back hear me okay? Yeah, we're good? Okay. So my name is Sean. I'm an education funding specialist with Granite Advance. For those who may not be aware, Granite Advance is a nonprofit. We are based out of Concord that helps you with this process, right? We had a senior night a little bit earlier this year to go over the college application process, what's needed there. This will focus a lot on the financial aid, right? And we'll talk about the services we offer, the forms that you're going to be looking to complete, as well as some scholarship searches, right, that you can start preparing for. And we'll bring in Goffstown specific info too, so that you know that process. If I turn it on. So most of you grabbed this on your way in. This is our Financial Aid Insider. If you grabbed anything on this table, Financial Aid Insider has the most stuff, right? It will help you kind of walk through this process, maybe answer any questions. It would also point you in our direction if you choose to use us. This is just a digital copy. It's also available on our website for you to grab. Again, we are a free service, right? So you can come to us with anything. We do presentations like this around New Hampshire. We are at FAFSA events throughout the year. I did the scholarship, the Free Money Fridays last year with Goffstown. So we're here to support you, right? To support our school counselors through that senior year, right? We do work with younger students, but we do have a higher emphasis on that senior class. Okay. I mentioned we offer appointments. You know, the more and more that I do this, I've been with Granite Advance for 3 years now. Prior to that, I was in higher ed at the college level, right? College admission, college financial aid, college athletics. And if I've learned everything, hello, you guys take some information on the desk there. It's all free for you. If I've learned anything, right? I stick 100 business majors in a room together. Every single one of those business majors is different somehow, some way, right? Whether it's the career focus they want to go for, whether it comes to the financial component, right? How much do they need, where they're going based on their specific wants and needs. So it's always nice to allow for a one-on-one appointment, right? Everybody's situation is different, and sometimes it's not easy to talk about it. One-on-one allows you to do that. The top two appointment types up there are focused on the education piece, right? Unsure what you want to major in. We do offer career assessments, right, to help a student figure it out. We take their strengths, we take their strengths in school as well as their hobbies and interests outside, and come up with ways to see what a college major could be for that student. We go over pathways, right? Do you want a tech degree, an associate's, a bachelor's degree? We're not here to force students in one way or another, right? We're here to give you the resources students need to make both an academic and financial smart decision, okay? The bottom three options here are strictly for financial aid, right? That first one is a prep. Maybe you have a weird situation. You don't know what to do. Come talk to us. Let's sit down and go over it together. The next one is we do sit down and do the FAFSA form with families, right? So you want an extra hand in doing that? Come talk to us. We do not focus one-on-one appointments on the CSS profile, but what I tend to tell people is take your best stab at the CSS profile, right? If there's questions that arise through doing that, come talk to me. Right? I can help you pinpoint the questions to make sure you're filling that form out correctly. And we'll talk about each of those forms as we go on. That last one, that's a spring appointment, right? So you're in the process of applying, starting to get accepted, do those financial aid forms. Come the spring, you're gonna start getting accepted. Once you get accepted, you're gonna get financial aid offers to all the schools you've been accepted to, and they're all gonna look different. And they're probably all gonna have different amounts listed, right? how to cover those, right? Are you using a loan to finance the education? Do you have a 529? Are you doing a payment plan? Let's sit down and go over that together. The big thing that I want to keep in mind is that college isn't a one-year thing, right? Yes, we are doing this to go on to college, but the college process is a 2-year, 4-year, or many more year process, right? So we want to make sure we understand what that looks like over time, especially if you're financing your education, okay? That could affect you for 10 plus years, okay? So financial aid is quite simple, right? Maybe I'm just saying that because I do it all day long, but financial aid is a way to help a student pay for school, right? This can be achieved by grants, scholarships, student loans, federal work study. Okay, schools do this by looking at a student's financial need. Okay, so by completing the FAFSA form, completing the CSS, completing the institutional forms, okay, this is going to show you what your financial need is. They're really searching for your student aid index, okay, and it's just that. It is an index of the student's financial need. And then schools are trying to award aid based on that number, based on how they award aid. Like I said, every school is a little bit different in how they do that, so we want to make sure you understand that process. Types of aid. The left side is the free side, right? So the left side is money that does not have to pay back. Merit scholarships, right? You get accepted to a school. Congratulations, Sean. You've been accepted to UNH with a $4,000 scholarship, okay? That's free money, money I do not have to pay back each year. But the next sentence that you're going to see is, you must maintain a specific GPA in order to receive that merit scholarship each year you're in school. So as long as you make that 2.0 or 3.0, you're eligible for that merit scholarship each year. Free money, right? You don't have to pay back. Maybe you're going for athletics, right? Looking at a Division I or Division II school for athletics. You get a national letter of intent saying, hey, I'm going to go here. I'm going to give you $5,000 towards that athletic ability. Again, you have to maintain that athletic ability all 4 years in order to receive that athletic funding each of those 4 years, okay? Need-based grants. This can come from the institution itself or through the federal government, okay? The big one through the federal government is the Pell Grant, okay? The Pell Grant is determined by that student aid index, right? That student aid index is calculated when you complete the FAFSA form, okay? If you're eligible for the Pell Grant, there are some programs available to you in the state of New Hampshire that we'll talk about later. There's also an SEOG grant. It is a supplemental grant of the Pell Grant, okay? These are the two federal grants that you can be looking at. Then there's institutional grants, right? Some schools award grants based on the financial aid forms that you complete. Some give a lot more than others, right? And we'll talk about that in a second too. Then you have self-help aid, okay? The top one, those federal student loans, that's money you have to repay, okay? You can use that loan. Every student, when they complete the FAFSA form, is eligible for a $5,500 student loan, right? So I get people all the time, they say, well, Sean, we're not doing the FAFSA because we're not eligible for anything, right? You may not be eligible for any free money, but you are eligible for something, okay? Right now, the federal student loan, the interest rate on that loan is a 6.53%, okay? That loan is solely in the student's name, okay? For a student who's 17, 18 with probably minimal credit, that's a very good interest rate for a student loan, right? I think in today's world, okay? You can receive that loan in two ways. One is a subsidized loan. Subsidized loan does not accrue interest while the student is in school. The federal government pays for it. Or an unsubsidized loan. The unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while the student's in school. So you can either receive both a subsidized and unsubsidized, or you would receive strictly an unsubsidized loan. That would come from the school, right? When you get your financial aid offer, they would show you, okay, you're eligible for a $5,500 unsubsidized loan. It's taking into consideration that SAI I keep mentioning, okay? Federal work study is an allocation, right? So it doesn't come off the bill. my bill for my school is $20,000. I receive a $10,000 merit scholarship. My balance is $10,000. If I have $3,000 worth of work study, my bill is still $10,000. Okay, I can work up to $3,000 in federal work study throughout an academic year, if that was my award. It is on the student to find a job, to get hired for that job, to work those hours, and if they do all of that, they get paid in a bi-weekly paycheck. That money goes straight into their bank account, right? Money that you can use on weekends, gas money to get home, whatever they want to do. It does not go towards their financial aid, towards paying down their bill, right? Now, right, we're just listening to the counselors, like we're approaching deadlines, right? We're approaching November 1st, November 15th. Maybe you have deadlines at the beginning of January, right? Maybe you're looking early decision, right? Where you have to know if you're gonna afford that college that you're looking at, okay? Or maybe you're having a family conversation and saying that keeping financial aid or keeping educational debt down is part of the process, right? I've had students come to me and say, Sean, one of the biggest things I want out of my college education is to come out of my 4 years with minimal educational debt, right? That's fine. Some of you may say, well, I understand the need for some educational debt. I just want you to understand, right? Make sure that that return on investment is there with that educational debt, okay? Net price calculators are a really nice way to learn what a college could cost you for one academic year, okay? So net price calculators are specific to a school, so all four-year schools have to have them on their website, okay? I can go out to any school and see what the net cost is, right? The sticker cost is, right? Cost of attendance isn't considering your direct costs, so tuition, room, and board, and indirect costs, books, materials, transportation, okay? Health insurance, right? Things like that. They're trying to give you an overall picture of what 1 year could cost you at that school. That doesn't mean they're charging you that, and that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to be paying, right? Net price calculators help you figure out the net cost that you would be spending on 1 year of your education. The biggest thing to keep in mind with the net price calculator, as Ms. Fall mentioned, right? The FAFSA is a little, anyone here have an older student in school? Okay, a few. A lot lower than I thought it was going to be. But last year's FAFSA wasn't the best, right? I'll be the first to admit it. It was a little messy. I truly think that this form moving forward is going to be much easier for families to use, right? It is unfortunate, right, that they had so many bugs and kinks and things that they hadn't worked out yet for what I think will be a solid form down the line, okay? But know what you're going to pay, right? And because of the changes with the FAFSA came changes in the calculation for that SAI, that Student Aid Index. In the past, you may have heard it referred to as EFC, Estimated Family Contribution. It changes, right, with the net price calculator. They should have updated their website to include the calculation for Student Aid Index. If you go out and use a school site for net price calculator and it says EFC, understand that that calculation will not be accurate for you, okay, because it is a different calculation. For example, right, if you pay child support or you receive child support, that will throw things off. On the old FAFSA, it was referred to as income. The new FAFSA, it's referred to as an asset. So it's going to skew those numbers. So just be mindful of that if you are using a net price calculator. And then the other thing to keep in mind is how a school awards aid, right? So I mentioned UNH earlier, right? I get accepted to UNH. UNH is a merit-based school. I'm getting a scholarship upon acceptance, and then they're giving me some type of need-based grant after the fact, but they're not trying to probably meet my financial need. Some schools, and we'll talk about it when we talk about CSS and institutional forms, bless you, we'll talk about how those schools are trying to meet a lot of the students' financial need, right? I've worked with a few students in the past that have applied to Dartmouth, UVM, schools like this because If they get in, they know that they're going to front a lot of the financial aid toward their costs, right? Because that financial need is great. So keep that in mind, and that's an easy thing to research. It's going to say it on the website, right? You go out to Dartmouth, it'll say Dartmouth is a fully need-based school. So you may not receive a scholarship, right? Your acceptance letter may just say, Sean, you've been accepted to Dartmouth, congratulations. And then the rest of that money comes once it reviews the financial aid forms. Okay? So as I mentioned, right, maybe you're looking to keep costs down. There are 2 New Hampshire specific programs I'm going to talk about on this slide. The first is the Granite Guarantee. So that Pell Grant that I mentioned, right, that is determined by completing the FAFSA. If you have a specific SAI, and it will tell you, right, you finish the FAFSA, it'd say you could potentially be eligible for the federal Pell Grant, as well as some loans, as well as some work study, okay? If you are a New Hampshire resident and eligible for the Pell Grant and are looking at any of the state institutions, UNH Manchester, Keene State, Plymouth State, you qualify for free tuition at those schools. Now, yes, it is only tuition, right? You still, if you're living on campus, paying room and board, but you're keeping those educational costs down, okay? The other program is what's called the Promise Program. And the Promise Program is at the community college level, okay? If you are a New Hampshire resident and eligible for the Pell Grant and looking at one of the state's community colleges, you're eligible for free tuition if you're going there full-time or part-time, okay? So if keeping costs down is important to you, check out those 2 programs. It's nothing additional that you have to apply for. It is worked on when that FAFSA information gets to the school. Okay, maybe you're not eligible for the Pell Grant, right? But maybe you're unsure of what you potentially want to major in, where that career is going to take you. Community college is a cost-effective option, right? It's $215 a credit. You're most likely not getting credit tuition per credit like that at any other schools in the state of New Hampshire. Okay, so it is a cost-effective option if that is what you're choosing to do. The other program that I talk about is Tuition Break. Tuition Break is a New England program. So if you are looking at and it's based on major. So if you are looking at a major that is not offered at UNH, Keene State, or Plymouth State, right, any of our public 4 years, but is offered at another New England-based public school, you can go to that school at a tuition break cost, right? So I'll give you an example, right? Golf management. Golf management is not offered at one of the state schools in New Hampshire, but maybe it's offered at a state school in Connecticut, okay? You can go to that Connecticut state school at the tuition break cost. Now, it's not in-state tuition and it's not out-of-state tuition. It falls somewhere in between. It's a percentage based on the schools that you're looking at, okay? Last year, the typical tuition break student saved around $8,600 a year, okay? That's over $32,000 for 4 years, right? It's not covering the costs, but it is keeping that educational cost down. A lot of really good information at the website. So if you're interested in saying, oh, well, what majors are out there, go check out the website. It does have a list of them available to you. All right, so now getting into the forms. What forms must you complete to be eligible for financial aid, right? Most schools, probably all schools, are going to ask you to complete the FAFSA. You don't have to, right? But I'll kind of go over in a couple of slides why I think it's important. FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. It is free to every student, okay? This form, I am crossing everything I have, right? Every finger I have that it's going to open December 1st, right? There was a little delay last year. Really hoping it opens on time this year. The other form that we're going to talk about is the CSS profile. That form is already open, and we'll talk about it. There are also schools that have institutional forms, Stonehill, RIT in New York. I would say if a school has an institutional form, it's going to mirror your CSS profile, okay, more so than the FAFSA form. They're trying to give you as much financial aid as possible, right? The biggest thing I will say, right, if you have a deadline coming up November 1st, if you have a deadline coming up November 15th, check when these forms are due, right? FAFSA is not open till December. Don't worry about that one. But if a school requires the CSS, and it will say it on the website, a lot of times they have deadlines when the application's due. So if my application is due November 15th, that CSS profile is going to be due November 15th as well. So make sure you're going out and you're reviewing those deadlines. You have a list of the schools that you're interested in. You know how you're applying. You know when those deadlines are. Add a few more columns, right? We're going to add when the FAFSA is due, if the CSS is required, and if it is, what is that deadline? Okay? We want to make sure you're eligible for the most amount of aid, right? So we want to make sure you're hitting those deadlines. Just like you want to get accepted to these schools, right? Early decision, early action. Give yourself the same chance for financial aid. All right, so the goal of the FAFSA, I've already said it, right? We want to create that student aid index, okay? That's all it is. It's an index of your financial need. I think everyone should do a FAFSA form, right? Even those students that say, well, I'm not going to be eligible for anything but a student loan, why should I do it? Okay? And the answer I give is, one, you don't know what you're eligible for until you actually do the form, right? There are schools in the state of New Hampshire that offer money just for completing the FAFSA form. If you're looking at Keene State, okay, if you do the FAFSA, you get a $500 scholarship. Doesn't matter when you do it. If you do it, you get $500, right? I know other schools, yeah.
Do we both, as the parent and the student, both have to fill out the FAFSA?
We'll get there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Good question, but we'll get there. It threw me off track. That's okay. Some schools give out aid just for completing the FAFSA, right? So you do the FAFSA by a specific date, you get $1,000, right? Take advantage of that. To me, right? If you do the FAFSA each 4 years, and you do it because you're eligible for a $1,000 grant or scholarship just for completing the FAFSA form, that is some hourly rate. Okay? So to me, it's worth it. You can do the FAFSA in under an hour. To me, it's worth it. The other reason, right, is because a lot of outside scholarships, right, our scholarship, New Hampshire Charitable, which we'll talk about, they require the student aid index. Right? So even if you're not eligible for the Pell Grant, right, and not using that student loan, you still want to do it for a chance of those outside scholarships, okay? I always recommend do it at least once, right? Do the FAFSA at least once. If you're not eligible for anything else at the school that you choose, don't do it again. But at least give yourself that option at the very beginning. The other thing, too, that I just want to mention here in case there is any misconception here is if you do the FAFSA form and all you're eligible for is the loan, you don't have to accept it. You can always decline the loan. They're not making you take it if you complete the FAFSA, so you can always decline that. Sometimes I think people say, well, if I do it, I have to keep that loan, and that's just not true. Okay? You do the FAFSA at studentaid.gov. And the reason I have it up here, and it's probably really hard to see for the people in the back, is because this is a great resource. Okay, I think a lot of people get really stressed out by this website, and they think FAFSA and they're like, right? Like, I don't want to, it's too much. I like it as a resource, right? And I'll kind of explain why. So right here, this tab is the FAFSA tab. That's where you go do the FAFSA. That's the loan and grants tab. That shows you what the Pell Grant is, how much you're eligible for. If you use your student loans, right, how much are you eligible for each year, right? Freshman, I said, $5,500. Sophomore, $6,500. Junior and senior year, $7,500 each year, right? What's the interest on that? Could the interest change each year? Okay, a lot of really good resources. The next tab right here is repayment. If you do use your student loan, what does repayment look like? Are you paying $300 a month in a standard repayment plan? Right? If you use all of your loans each year you're in school, that's $27,000. Not including any interest that accrues. How are you going to repay it? Right? Check out that tab so that when you graduate, you're like, what's the $300 payment I have to make? It's your student loans, right? You're aware of what that looks like before you graduate. And then maybe you're looking at a public service job, right? Or a teaching job, right? There's loan forgiveness for those areas. Go check that out. What does that mean? How many years do you have to repay before they'll forgive it, right? Check out what is available to you so that you understand this commitment and this investment you're making on your education. Okay? So to start the FAFSA process, you need a studentaid.gov account. Okay? FSA ID. You're going to see them used interchangeably. Okay? If you grab this page, just walks you through it. Okay? How to create an FSA ID. I'll leave them up here in case you didn't grab one on the way in. It's a username password combination, and it's specific to a person. Okay? So if I'm doing the FAFSA, I have an FSA ID account. If my mom is going on the FAFSA with me, my mom needs a separate FSA ID account. Okay? The reason we're going to talk about this now is because you will not be able to complete your FAFSA. If you go out and do your FSA ID the day you do the FAFSA, you will not be able to complete that FAFSA that day. And the reason why is because those FSA IDs take 3 to 5 days to verify. You do it now, it's probably going to take a day or two. Okay? When you do it in December, when everyone's rushing to that site, it may take a little bit longer, right? It's verified with the Social Security Administration. It takes 15 minutes to create it for each person. Okay, so go in prepared. Get this done before December so you're ready to go when that FAFSA form opens. Okay? So we're going to get to your question now, right? Who needs an FSA ID? Who is on the FAFSA form? The next 2 slides are going to go over it. Okay, so this first slide, if parents are married, okay, and file taxes jointly, both parents will be listed on the FAFSA form, but only one parent needs an FSA ID, right? Because they're consenting to the use of that joint tax return. Okay? If parents are not married, right, and living together, and they file separate, right, or parents are married filing separately, both parents are going to be on the FAFSA form, and both of them will need an FSA ID, right? Because both sets of taxes need to be a part of that FAFSA form. Okay, that's the easy slide. Okay, a little bit more arrows here, right? So bear with me. If you are in a separated or divorced situation, the first thing we got to figure out is who is the FAFSA parent. Okay, the FAFSA parent is the parent that provides the most financial support to a student. Okay, so some people say, well, Sean, we're 50-50. When the student's with me, I pay. When the student's with them, they pay. Then it's going to come down to which parent has the higher income, right? That is coming straight from the federal government, okay? We can help you, give you ideas as how to figure that out, right? If you have questions, please don't hesitate to come see me afterwards or set up an appointment with me, right? Happy to walk you through it. It's not as cut and dry as this makes it seem, right? There are so many different things that come into play. Who's paying for more of the things, right? The after school things, the insurance, the car insurance. There's so many things that come into play. Let's sit down and have a conversation if it needs to happen. Okay? Once you figure out the FAFSA parent, right? If that parent is not remarried, that's the only parent going on the FAFSA form. Okay? Once you figure out the FAFSA parent, if that FAFSA parent is remarried and they file taxes jointly, both parent and step-parent will be on the FAFSA form, but only one parent or step-parent needs an FSA ID, right? Their joint tax return will be added by one parent. Okay? If parent, that is the FAFSA parent, and step-parent file taxes separately, parent and step-parent both need an FSA ID because both sets of information need to be added to the FAFSA form. I've noticed that hand gestures work a lot to kind of help explain it, but it is broken down a little bit more in that Financial Aid Insider that you have. Yes, it walks you through what parent needs to be added to the FAFSA form, but again, we want to make sure you're prepared before you do that FAFSA form. Okay, so please ask questions if you need some help walking through that process. Okay, once we figure out, right, who the parent is, we're hopping into the form. One of the first things it's going to ask you is to consent to the use of tax information for FAFSA purposes only. Student and parent must consent. If they don't, the student is not eligible for federal student aid. Okay? Now sometimes I get, well, Sean, my kid doesn't work, they don't file taxes, why do they have to consent to something that's not there? Right? And the answer is for that reason, right? We need to be able to consent to say, okay, this kid does not work and it wasn't required to file taxes. Or maybe they did work, but they didn't make over the threshold, right? So they weren't required to file. Same thing for a parent, right? If a parent needs that, if a parent doesn't file taxes because they don't work, same thing. We need to see that on their side. From there, it's a smart form, right? That information is shared from the IRS. It doesn't come into the FAFSA form. I don't see it when I work with a family, okay? The family doesn't even see it, right? It will be shared to the schools once that information goes there. Sometimes it will take you straight to the end of the form, say, hey, I got what I need. Other times it may ask if you are part of any federal programs, right? Medicaid, SNAP, TAMP, things like that, okay? It may ask you for your assets, right? The assets that are looking for are in the light blue down there. So it's stocks, bonds, money markets, mutual funds. If you have a 529 for the student, right? College savings plan, that is a parent asset, okay? If you have an UGMA or an UTMA, right, which is a unified gift or a unified trust for a minor, that is a student asset, not a parent asset, okay? If you have any equity on second properties, it's not going to ask primary residence, but if you have a second property, it will ask the equity on that.
Is the 529 still a parent asset if it's in the student's name?
It is still a parent's asset, yes.
Still owned by the parent.
Yes. Yep.
What about 401ks?
On the FAFSA, they are not asked for. Yep. So it's really looking for everything non-retirement on the FAFSA form.
If the FAFSA is in the if the 529 is in the grandparent's name,
It is not listed on the FAFSA form.
great,
Yep.
thanks.
All of those questions, though, were great questions because they'll change if the CSS is required. And we'll talk about it in a second, okay?
And you said that child support
Is
is
a,
an asset
correct.
to the parent or to the child?
It would be a parent asset. Whose FAFSA is it? It is the student's FAFSA, right? There's been numerous times, right, in higher ed, working in admission, a parent will call and say, Sean, I'm checking the status of our application. Right? It's not the student's, it's the student's application, right? Yes, all of this is a family decision, right? Super excited for the student, but ultimately it is the student's FAFSA, right? If the student takes out the student loans, they're only in the student's name. It is the student's responsibility to repay those. We want to make sure we understand it's the student's FAFSA. When is the deadline to complete the FAFSA? It's going to vary per school, right? Some schools are going to say, hey, FAFSA deadline of March 1st. Some will say regular admission closes January 15th. You need it by January 15th, right? Check the website. It will tell you when those deadlines are, right? Obviously, there's not going to be a deadline prior to December 1. Schools aren't vicious like that. Okay, year's tax return that we use. So on the FAFSA form, we're using 2023 tax information, right? Prior year. So now if you're saying, well, Sean, 2023, totally different picture as to where I am financially today in a negative way, right? We'll talk about that in a second. Who qualifies as an independent student, right? So majority of students going from high school into college are going to be dependent students, right? Meaning parent information is going to be listed on that FAFSA form. There are about 10 questions on the FAFSA form that decide your status, right? So if you're a dependent or an independent, those 10 questions, right, are you over the age of 24? Are you currently active duty? Are you a U.S. veteran? Do you have any legal dependents? Were you ever in foster care? Were you ever an emancipated minor? Were you ever in a legal guardianship? Are you an at-risk youth or a self-supporting youth at risk of homelessness? And there's one more, and I can't think of it, right? But these are the questions that are going to populate for you. If you answer no to all of these questions, you're a dependent student, right? So parent information will then be asked of you. If you answer yes to any of those questions, you will be able to continue and only provide your information as the student, right? Independent student. Now, keep in mind, right, these students will have to prove those situations that they marked, right? So if I mark that I'm in a legal guardianship, the school will then reach out and say, well, Sean, you marked that you're in a legal guardianship. Can you please provide paperwork? I send it in. School verifies my FAFSA, and we're good to go. Okay. So that's how we decide independent student. Sometimes I get families that say, well, students living by themselves, they pay for everything, they have their own job, they're self-supporting, they do all of that. That is awesome, right? That student is so independent, but if they check no to all of those questions on that form, they're still a dependent student of their parent. Does the number of college students in the household impact financial aid? And the answer is no. At the federal level, it doesn't. It used to in the past, right? But at the federal level, it does not. Now, some schools it's still asked on the FAFSA, right? I believe it's asked on the CSS. If it is, right, some schools may use that in their determination of institutional aid, but at the federal level, it does not impact it. And then if a student's not sure they're going to college, should they still complete the FAFSA? I think you all know me well enough now, right? Then I'm going to say yeah. I think it's important, right? Because it allows the conversation to continue, right? If I get a kid that comes to me and say, well, Sean, I probably will take a gap year, I'll go work, right? Maybe an opportunity presents to them that they could go into an apprenticeship program, or they have a friend that said, hey, if you go get your HVAC degree, I will hire you after you finish it, right? Then it allows me to have a conversation with that student to say, where can I go and do these programs, right? Again, it takes less than an hour to complete. To me, it's not a huge waste of time, okay? The other financial aid form is the CSS profile, right? Thing to keep in mind here is that not every school requires it. If a school requires it, do it. Okay, it will help provide financial aid. If a school does not require it, right, sometimes people say, well, if I do this, will it put me a step ahead at other institutions? Do not waste your time, right? Schools that do not require it will not take it into consideration, okay? About 250 schools require this form. And remember, I did say that some schools have their own institutional form. Sometimes it's just easier for them to do that. Again, that mimics the CSS profile. Again, that will be listed on their website. The two biggest differences between the CSS profile and the FAFSA form is, one, the CSS profile does cost money. Yes, there are fee waivers available to you, but that CSS profile costs $25 for the first school you list, and then $16 for each additional school after. Okay? The second biggest difference is that it takes a lot longer to complete. Okay, when I tell families about the CSS, I say, hey, give yourself 2 hours. It doesn't have to be in one sitting, but it asks for a lot of information, right? The FAFSA form asks for 2023 tax information. The CSS profile will ask for the same. It will also ask for current year tax information, right? Pay stubs, whatever, okay? It will also ask for more asset information, right? So the FAFSA doesn't ask for primary residence. The CSS profile does. The FAFSA doesn't ask for retirement accounts. The CSS profile does. Okay? Second properties, CSS will ask for, so is the FAFSA, right? But a lot more information is provided on that CSS because remember, those schools that are requiring the CSS are trying to give you as much financial aid as they possibly can. So they ask for a lot of information. Someone asked about a 529, right, from a grandparent. All 529s where the student is the beneficiary need to be listed on the CSS profile, right? So grandpas would come into play if the school required a CSS. Okay, a lot more information. You can access the CSS profile from the student's College Board account. If it is a divorce separation situation, they will ask for non-custodial parent information. Okay, it is kept separate from the main form. Okay, it's sent to the school, okay, but they will ask for it, right? So be aware. Now, sometimes I get, well, Sean, that non-custodial has no contact, we haven't talked to them. All schools are going to be different in how they review a non-custodial form. So if you need to, ask the schools that you're working with, right, that you're looking into. It may be different. I just had this conversation with Bentley, right? Bentley requires a CSS. you have, no contact, you're estranged from parents, right? That non-custodial, they could potentially give you a waiver for that non-custodial form, right? But it's all going to be different depending on the schools that you're looking at. Okay, so I mentioned, right, the FAFSA form uses 2023 tax information, okay? Now, let's say in 2023 you made $200,000. Today's picture is more like $100,000, okay? That's a big difference. What you would want to do is a special circumstance or a financial aid appeal. It's all the same thing, okay? The thing to keep in mind, right, loss in income, death in a parent, high medical bills, things like that will be taken into consideration, right? Maybe you cashed out a pension or an IRA in 2023 and that's just not where your picture is today. Talk to a financial aid office. On the CSS profile, there's a section where you can write a special circumstance, right? Hey, in 2023, we were married, we've since divorced. There's things that you can put in a special circumstance on the CSS. The FAFSA form does not have a special circumstance section, so if something changed, I really recommend reaching out to the school that you're looking at, right? So if they only require the FAFSA form, send a note to the financial aid office to say, hey, you have my FAFSA that has my 2023 tax information, but that income's way different than today's picture, right? And then they'd put you through a financial aid appeal because they want to help you as of today, not as of 2 years ago, right? So don't be afraid to have those conversations with the school. Also, be realistic in your ask, right? If you're going through this appeal, the purpose of appeal is to try to lower that SAI, right? That need index. Okay, so if we're trying to lower that to, maybe you had a 10,000 SAI and your income dropped and it lowers you to a 0 SAI, right? For example. That means you're eligible for the Pell Grant now, right? That opens up different opportunities. Maybe the UNH, maybe Keene State, Plymouth State, things like that, okay, with that free tuition. There are things that can come out of an appeal. Just be realistic. If you're looking for $30,000 more, it's not so realistic, right? That may be a bigger conversation to say, should that have been on your list in the first place if that is not a financially smart choice for where you are currently. All right, and then we're going to wrap up last kind of section here, scholarships. We're going to go over two different kinds, right? National scholarships and local scholarships. National scholarships, those are search engines up there, right? Where you can go out and you can create a profile, right? Sean, I have a 4.0. I grew up in New York, going to school in New Hampshire. I've sat in a hammock. I've ridden a bus. All of the things that I do, right, so that they can send me all of the scholarships I could potentially be eligible for. Now I see all you little giggling about my joke, right? But there are scholarships out there for everything, right? There are scholarships for just going and visiting a Dunkin' Donuts, right? Which seems crazy, right, when you're in New England, but there are scholarships out there. There are over 100 million scholarship monies that go unused each year, just because people aren't signing up. One of the biggest complaints I get from school counselors is that not enough students sign up for their scholarships, right? Local companies want to give you their money. Let them give you that money. Biggest tips I give are, one, don't ever pay money for a scholarship, right? They should be paying you. They should be giving you all that free money. And then create an email specific for scholarships, right? SeanGoesToCollege@gmail.com. Give your parents access to it so they don't have to keep telling you, well, where's the scholarships? What scholarships are you eligible for? What have I seen? Have one dedicated place where you can all share it, right? If you do any national searches, they're going to spam you, right? They're going to send you as many emails as they possibly can to get you to apply to these scholarships, okay? So keep it in one spot. When you're done searching for scholarships over the next 4 years, you delete that and it hasn't come into your personal email, right? Keep it separate. Local searches. I personally like local searches. I think that there's a lot more money available to students because there's a higher chance of potentially winning a local scholarship compared to a national, right? I can go out and apply to $500 national scholarships, but so has 4,000 other people, right? What's the chance of me winning a $500 scholarship against 4,000 people? If you keep it local, how many graduating seniors are there? Ish.
250?
250, right? You sign up for the local scholarships through Goffstown, you're going up against 250 students, right? The percentage of the chance to win is much greater at the local level than at the national level. Denise, you want to speak a little bit about Goffstown specific scholarships?
Sure. Not like that.
It's okay. I have faith.
So what we do here is usually after the Christmas break, end of January into February, we start to pump out our scholarships here. They go on Naviance. All students should be very aware at this point what Naviance is. We've sort of beaten it into them a little bit over these last couple weeks with a lot of love. We do list them all there, so they can go in any time and they can do searches and they can see the list of local scholarships. We hosted a Free Money Friday last year. We're planning to do the same thing this spring, where we call all the seniors down and we have them actually fill out our local scholarship form, and then we have all of the other local scholarships forms that are available at that time ready to go for them. We actually will hunt students down and have them apply for things if we find that we don't have enough applicants. So we put out a lot of energy and effort to try to have students take money, which feels weird, but that's what happens. And I think sometimes it is a little bit of application burnout. You know, they've done colleges stuff. Some students are getting ready to do APs. There's just a lot of things happening. So as much as you guys can, just keep going and keep applying for stuff, because free money is good stuff that you want to get. The other thing we do is we always do push the charitable foundation that is New Hampshire. So they have a great scholarship that we always push out. It usually opens mid-January and is available till about mid-April for four-year college students. We usually have somebody from that institution here on our Free Money Friday as well. So we really try to do a lot to push that out. So encourage your kids to get free money. Yeah.
Great. Parents, check with your employers, right? They may have scholarships for your dependents. Students, if you have a part-time job, check with them, right? I know McDonald's, I've seen Market Basket, I've seen Hannaford, I had somebody else tell me something the other day. Can't remember, right? But they give out scholarships to their students, right? I've seen McDonald's give $1,000. I've seen Market Basket give $1,000, okay? Don't be afraid to ask. Really, the worst that they're going to say is no, right? Denise mentioned New Hampshire Charitable, right? Great foundation. They give out $8 million a year in scholarship, okay? The reason, again, why I love local scholarships is because, again, there's a better chance of winning. If you are looking for a bachelor's degree, right, a 4-year school, there's potentially $9,000 available to you just on this slide alone, okay? Our scholarship, if you're looking at a trade school, is $1,000, right, the one on the left. If you're looking at an associate's degree, it's $2,500, okay? That's half tuition at a community college, okay? If not a little bit more than half of your tuition for a year, okay? $5,000 for a bachelor's degree seeking student. New Hampshire Charitable's typical award is around $4,000, okay, for a bachelor's degree student. As she mentioned, right, January 15th, usually New Hampshire Charitable's open, usually closes around mid-April. Our scholarship opens March 1st, closes in May. As she said, right, the timeline of senior year goes by quick, and it is filled with a bunch of stuff. I'm really a big believer, get your financial aid forms done before the new year, right? I know that's hard. December is a crazy month, right? For numerous reasons, right? Wrapping up school break, holidays, hanging out, snow, right? A lot comes into play. But if you have those forms done, if you've done early action, early decision, you're applying really early January, then it's just a waiting game, right? You're waiting for acceptance. Then you're waiting for financial aid forms. While you're waiting for all this stuff, you can work on your scholarships, right? It leads you up to a really nice timeline so you're not stressing come the new year, okay? And then just to wrap up, right? Make sure we're prepared, right? Get all that financial information that's needed for these forms and make a chart, right? Stay as organized as possible. You have a chart on how you're applying to school, right? When those deadlines are, do the same thing for financial aid forms. We want to make sure you're eligible for the most amount of aid possible. Just popped into my head, right? One of the other things to really remember when it comes to scholarships is check with your school about their scholarship policy. Okay, some schools, and it's my least favorite thing, it is my least favorite thing about education, right, is that some schools will change your financial aid offer if you receive a certain amount of outside scholarships, right? Depending on that amount. So when you do narrow it down to 2-3 schools, right, have that conversation with the financial aid office. Say, hey, if my kid wins $5,000 in outside scholarships, is that potentially going to affect their financial aid? And they'll tell you straight up, right, if it does or not. And you want to be aware of that prior to depositing somewhere and then not having that $5,000, right, $5,000 taken away from the school. We want to make sure you're understanding of that. So at least have that conversation with them. With the FAFSA form, you can submit up to 20 schools on each FAFSA submission, right? So if you're applying to, let's say, 23 schools, you do the FAFSA, you list the first 20, you let the form go through, let it process, then you go back in, delete all the schools, add the additional 3, and then fully submit that form again, right? You can submit the FAFSA to as many schools as you want. You can only do 20 at a time, okay? And then submit your FAFSA and CSS at the earliest deadline, right? If your deadline is November 15th and you submit it November 1st, great. Great, you got it out of the way, okay? And determine what schools require the CSS, right? Make sure you're doing it for those schools and not overworking yourself with that CSS if it isn't required, okay? And then I know I threw a lot of information at you in the last hour, but does anyone have any specific questions they'd like to ask? Yeah.
Just quick question. I have an older daughter that she's in school, and I've done the FAFSA. Another student, hopefully next fall. Do I have to fill it the parent portion twice or just one FAFSA?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in that situation, right, I'll start with an FSA ID because sometimes I get that question too, right? If I have 2 kids, do I do 2 separate FSA IDs for the parent? The answer is no. Remember, FSA ID is specific to a person, to a social, okay? So one parent needs it. So you are the FAFSA parent for both daughters, right? You would have to do a separate one for older daughter and for younger daughter. But keep in mind the parent section is a pretty easy, it's like a 10-15 minute process. There are certain things like consent, I think consent and signature transfer over, but there are a few things that you'd have to do. So it's not like in the past with probably your older daughter where it was a little time consuming or things transferred over. They're not there yet. They're still trying to work through the bugs and the kinks. Maybe in the future they'll be there, in the next year or 2, but right now, no. But I will say it's not a heavy lift right in the parent section because it is a minimal section. Yeah.
If I had a FAFSA ID like 10 years ago, will that still be valid or do I need to create a new one?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So when you go out to, in case people didn't hear, right, if they had an account from 10 years ago, do they have to create a new one, right? Or is that one still valid? So what I always recommend is go out to studentaid.gov. In the top right corner, it's going to say log in or create an account, okay? Create an account. Put in your social, and it's going to say, hey, your social is already in use. And then you can go through the process of recovering that ID, right? It will ask for like your email, phone number. If those things have changed in the last 10 years, it will allow you to do a photo ID recovery and allow you to put in new information to update that ID. So it's kind of hard to say, yeah, you will need one, but I always like to check just by creating one because it's based on social. It'll tell you one way or another if you have one. Yeah.
Is there anything with regard to military dependence, if a student is a military dependent?
Not on the FAFSA form.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe scholarship.
Yeah.
Okay. And another quick question, the CSS, if a school, I guess they either require it or they don't, or?
Correct.
So it's not like it's optional. They say, they're gonna say they need it or they don't.
Correct.
It's not, okay.
Yeah. If they don't require it, don't do it. Yep. Don't waste your time.
Got it.
How
Yep.
involved is the CSS?
CSS is asking for everything. It's like a lot of information. Yeah. It's gonna, like I said, it asks 2023, 2024 tax information, every type of asset you have. It will ask retirement. It will ask all 529s the student's a beneficiary of. right? Like I worked with someone who said, great aunt was the holder of a 529 for the student, right? That's not listed on the FAFSA form, but it will be asked on the CSS because that student is the beneficiary of it.
And can you use the same email for the student and the parent?
In like the FSA IDs, absolutely not. The federal government does not like that. Yeah, so the email will be specific. I've run into a lot of issues with that because, right, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, right, doing the FSA IDs, you kind of could, right? So I had a lot of people that did, parent would do the student's ID with their emails, and then the parent would do it with their spouse's information. So trying to figure out whose account was what and what emails were where, it gets tricky, right? So it's like, you're like a sleuth trying to figure out how to get into somebody's account. Yeah,
But the
it's weird.
student doesn't have one separately, one, two parents, or obviously depending on their scenarios.
Every student doing a FAFSA needs one.
Both, so the parent and the student need.
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Does a child do a CSS profile as well? I would assume no.
Well, so on the CSS profile, it's through the College Board, right? So the student logs in with their account, but if parents are married, parents can log in with their student's account to do the CSS. So it's almost like the parent and the student are one in the CSS profile, unless there's a non-custodial, and then the non-custodial parent would have to create their own CSS profile account or College Board login account. Yeah.
Our son's in 2026. When would be an appropriate time to start filling out the FAFSA form and CSS form?
So it would be October 1st of his senior year. Yeah, that's when, hopefully at that time, both forms open again on October 1st. Any other questions?
So that's the normal timeline, or you've been December these last 2 years, the October one is normal?
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
The CSS form, if it's needed for a specific college, you have to do it repeatedly if there's different colleges that need it, or is it the same?
It's one form, it's like the FAFSA, right? It's one form, you're just listing the schools that need it. The other thing to keep in mind is that some schools will ask supplemental questions, right? So if I'm applying to Tufts and Bowdoin, Tufts might say, hey, I need you to answer these 3 questions separately. You'll answer those questions, only those questions go to Tufts, right? They don't go to both schools, but some schools, because of their calculation and how they award aid, will ask for specific questions as one-offs on the CSS profile. Yeah?
Do you ever see colleges providing waivers for CSS profile?
Yeah, so waivers include, I believe, free and reduced lunch and then also income levels. So once the parent puts in their AGI, it would tell them right away if they qualify for a fee waiver or not. Yeah.
Do you recommend doing the CSS for all the schools, or is it something you can do for one school and then add on other schools later if needed?
You mean if all the schools require the CSS?
Yeah, like if we.
Yeah, you can be strategic about it. So like if one school, if one school requires it by November 15th, submit that one. That's $25, right? That's your first one. If all the rest of the schools require it by January 15th, and you do all the rest January 15th, it's 16, 16, 16, however many schools you're applying to after that fact. Yep. They don't all have to be submitted at once. Yeah, yeah.
So technically, the parent could do the CSS all by themselves, and then.
It would just be.
do FAFSA with your child.
Yeah. The CSS would be through the student's College Board account, but you could ultimately sit down and do that yourself. The thing with the FAFSA is it's a rule-based form, right? So the process is basically, right, student logs in to their section, says I'm the student, goes through the FAFSA form, answers their questions, right, answers those independent versus dependent questions. It asks for parent information, and basically what that's going to do is going to send an invitation saying, hey, Mom, Dad, I want you to complete your parent section on the FAFSA form, right? Student goes through, completes their section, submits their section, parent can then go out into their FSA ID and they'll see the invitation, right? Sean's invited you to complete your parent section. Okay, parent completes their section, takes about 15 minutes. Okay, once the parent submits it, it will say FAFSA has been completed, right? Now, you could also do it the opposite way, right? So parent goes out, I say, okay, I'm gonna do it for my kid, right? I go out, first thing it's gonna ask for is student information. That's gonna send an email to the student, hey Sean, your parent wants you to be involved in this FAFSA, right, in your FAFSA. Parent can go through and do basically 80% of the form. Then the student would have to log in, consent to use of tax information, list their schools, and then basically sign and submit. So you can do it from both sides. Doesn't matter who starts it or who finishes it. They just have to do it from two separate accounts, the parent account and the student
You
account.
need the list of schools before you do the FAFSA?
Yeah. Yep. You should be listing all of the schools that the student is applying to, right? Don't wait until they're accepted. You can list the schools. It basically kind of sits out there until they're accepted. Then once they're accepted, it's brought into the institution. And remember, students are only getting FAFSA information, getting that financial aid picture from schools they've been accepted to, right? So if you do a FAFSA for a school and you do not get accepted, they will never see your FAFSA information.
So can you go back and add schools later?
Always. Yep. Any other questions?
So obviously, when you said the child support is an asset, I assume it's the asset to the person receiving the child support?
So we'll only ask if you receive child support. Yeah. It won't ask if you pay it.
And you had mentioned 2024 information. So income that you don't know yet, like beneficiary of trust, for example?
Like on the CSS,
No, in the tax return.
for the CSS profile.
Yeah, oh, you wouldn't do that in the FAFSA. You just do the completed tax return?
So the
26?
tax return used on the FAFSA, no matter what you want to do, is going to be the 2023.
Okay.
It will not allow you to link to any other year. The CSS profile, kind of to go off of what you're saying, right, is it's going to ask for your 2023 tax information, current year, so whatever you can provide, and then it also asks for like projected 2025. Yeah, yeah,
I guess that's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Projected.
yeah. And for me, I would say if you're doing a projected, like project on the low side, right?
Lower side.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Was the form going to close the tax information? We don't have to enter anything, I guess,
Yeah, so that's why it takes a lot less time to do, because there's a lot less manual input. Because basically when you say, yes, I consent to the use of my tax information, that's all you're doing, right? If they have your tax return out there at the IRS, there has been, this past year, right, have done way too many FAFSAs this past year. I've probably had to manually input a tax year or tax information probably less than I can count on my fingers, right? So not a lot. That's in a rare sense, like a rare, right? Maybe you didn't file taxes, or maybe you had an amended tax return, right? There's always some type of anomaly as to why. But yeah, once you share the tax information, it has what it needs. So that's really helped cut down the amount of time it takes to complete. Correct. It doesn't even pull, it does pull it into the FAFSA, but it's the sharing. So like if I were to sit down and do a FAFSA with you, I would have no idea what your income is because it does not show on the form. It's only shared on the back end with the schools once they receive it. Yeah.
And for the CSS, that could have an earlier deadline for
It could.
their school.
Yep. All schools are different. Any other questions?
Where do you typically see that
Yeah, so it's tricky, right? So I tend to go to like admission, apply, undergraduate students. Sometimes it will have financial aid and deadlines. You could always do like tuition and financial aid. It's really dependent on the school. Like I did Bentley, I had to download an Excel spreadsheet. Like it's all different. All schools are different. They don't make it easy if that's what you're asking. Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
If we have students whose first deadlines for application are Friday, do we need to be working on our FAFSA before Friday?
Nope. So FAFSA will open December. All schools are aware of that. So they'll have I would say reach out to the school to say, if they require, if they require the FAFSA or if they don't require the CSS profile, ask them what their recommended deadline is. But if you do the FAFSA in October, in December, you're probably fine for those deadlines when it comes to the FAFSA.
Thank you everyone for all your questions and for coming out tonight, but we're gonna wrap it up. If you need any other information, I'll get out of the way. This is the good place you wanna go if you have any questions, you wanna set up any appointments with Granite Advance to get some assistance with financial aid. They're an amazing free resource for families and for students. Let's give Sean a round of applause for.
You're welcome.